Crafty Josephine here again. I thought today I would share with you how I make my little witch gnome. She stands about 6 inches tall, I want to say, and she's about 3 inches wide. And instead of starting with the fabric cutting like I normally do, what I'm going to first do is I have a green nose for her, so I'm going to go ahead and start painting that because a lot of times I'll end up putting a second coat on. And so at least this way I can get my first coat to dry, and then I can start working on the fabric. So I just have some Anita's acrylic paint. I'm sure any acrylic paint would work. And then the noses that I use are 3/4 inch, but they have smaller ones. And since she's a smaller gnome, if you have smaller wood beads, that would work as well. And also just another tip, if you do end up buying a bag of those balls, is that sometimes some of them are kind of weird. Like, I don't know if you can see on this one, but it's got some really scuffed up parts, and parts where the wood grain just doesn't look so pretty. And so since I don't want to use that on another gnome where I'm not painting the nose, I'm going to use it on this one, and then most of those imperfections will get covered up. So if you do end up painting your nose, you might want to just pick out one of the balls that isn't so pretty. So for my witch gnome, I have the 3-inch base for the cone-shaped body, which is just like my scarecrow. So if you've seen that video, it's the same body as that one. And I use a charcoal gray felt for her, but of course you could use whatever color you wanted. So I decided before I start cutting out the pieces that I'll just go ahead and draw all the patterns down first. So for the hat, I make a black hat, and of course again you can still make whatever color you want. I use just regular black felt, but I just thought I'd let you know they do have this kind of stiff black felt that you could use if you wanted. I think I got this one from Hobby Lobby. Is it going to show up there? Sort of, kind of. There we go. And then I think this one, came from Joann's, but I'm not positive. So they're just a little bit stiffer, but I find that the regular felt, you know, stands up, or hat is a cone, and it stands up pretty good without any additional help. So I don't really see the need to use that felt because it is a little bit more expensive. And then to draw my lines on the black felt, because obviously that's going to be a little bit harder to see, I use these markers, Mark Be Gone. And they don't probably show up so good on camera, but I can see it in person, which is the important thing. So that's what you should use if you're going to draw on the black felt. So this is the cone part of her hat. You might be able to see it a little on camera, and I just go over it a couple times usually. I think you can kind of see that, right? And then the brim of her hat is actually the same size as the cone base, her body's cone base. Same exact size, so just use that pattern again. Oh, that didn't show up so good, that didn't it? I think I'm running out of ink in this marker. Alright, I have another one that I will use. This one's pink. And it doesn't work as good as you might imagine, but it does do the trick. And again, you probably won't be able to see it, but I'll be able to see it when I go to cut it out. And then this is the middle circle of her hat that will get cut out. And I usually just kind of eyeball that. I know, right? I should be measuring, but I just kind of look and see where the center is. If you feel like you need to measure to get it even, by all means, go for it. Okay, and then the last part we have to do is her arms. So I have this purple patterned fabric that I use, and I think I got this one at Joann's if you're going to find it. So I'll cut out 2 of her arms, And obviously, again, you can use whatever you like, but I would say if you're going to use a pattern, I would just recommend going with something that's a small pattern, because her arms are so small that a big pattern would just not look right. Alright, so I just need 2 of these. Alright, and now I'll start cutting out. Alright, and while I'm cutting things out, I'm going to go ahead and cut the pieces of fur that I will use for her ponytails. And again, this isn't something I measure, but I'll measure it out when I'm done cutting it for you guys, because I've gotten so used to the size that I just know about how big it needs to be. So I'm cutting 2 pieces, and I'll just cut 1 large piece and then divide that in half. Cutting on the back of the fur away from myself. Okay, so each of these is, if you're measuring the back of the fur, each one is about 2 inches by, let's say, about 1 1/4 inches. 2 inches by 1 1/4 inches, right there. Alright, so I'm going to start by sewing down the side edge of my witch hat. And, yeah, I'm going to change the color of my thread 3 times for this project, so that's going to be fun. But here we go. So just like I've done before, I have pinned the rounded edge of that quarter circle to the circular base, and I'm just going to slowly start sewing around. And I just pull out the pins and smooth my fabric as I go. You know, it's going to want to try to wrinkle, and you just kind of have to smooth those wrinkles out of the way. Go slow, and it's not too bad. So all I have left now is to sew up the straight edge of the cone, and I just want to make sure that I leave enough of an opening so that I can later stuff the gnome body. Alright, so I'm on my 3rd thread color, and I'm ready to do the arms. And I think I've shared before also that sometimes I fold that edge under, so this is basically where her little hand is going to come out. Sometimes I sew that edge under, and sometimes I just leave that edge by her hand rough like that. I think the witch gnome is kind of a cute one to have a rough edge on, but I believe right now in my Etsy listing I do have it sewn under, so just to be consistent with my listing, I'm going to sew it under. But you do what you want to do. And I just turn it about 1/4 inch. And then just right sides together, like that. I fold it this way. Like so. Then I'll just sew that edge there, about a 1/4 inch seam. Okay, in case you were wondering why I sewed this edge under but not the edge that will attach to her body. So this is one of the gnomes where instead of tucking the arm up into their hat, I attach the arm with a button. And when I do that, I kind of just will end up folding this arm in like that and attaching it with a button. And so I don't know, I just don't worry about having that edge be sewn. Obviously you could, if that makes you happy, go ahead and sew that edge under right now. I'm just going to tuck mine under. Alright, so I'm getting ready to stuff the cone-shaped body of the gnome. And I start with just a small bag of rice to weight the body down. And there's probably only maybe like a 1/4 or 1/3 cup of rice in this baggie. And I'm just using a rubber band to close it up. Just trim off the extra. And I'm going to turn my arms right side out. And because they're so skinny, I just get them started and then I use a pencil with an eraser on the edge to help push them the rest of the way through. So now that I've gotten the body stuffed as much as I need it to be, I am going to go ahead and close up that opening we have that I used for stuffing. And I've doubled some thread, knotted it, and I'm going to use the ladder stitch just to close that up. Let's see if I can hide my knot down in here. So for the ladder stitch, my stitches are about maybe 1/4 inch. That seems to be my favorite measurement, 1/4 inch stitches. And then I go over to the other side. Let's see, can we see this? Get this in focus. Pretty good. It's actually better farther away, isn't it? Take it to the other side, go down about 1/4 inch, bring it back up, and that just keeps the stitches hidden. Alright, so often I use pom-poms as hands for my gnomes, and I would just glue those inside. But since my gnome has a green nose and I only have kind of those beige colored pom-poms, I want my hands to match. So you could use, if you wanted, 1/2-inch wood balls and paint those green. But what I usually do is just make my own hands. And just a reminder, all my patterns are for free and they'll be listed in my blog. And the link to that is in the description below. But anyway, so I've traced 2 of my patterns for the hands on some green felt that matches the color of the nose pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those out. I have this green embroidery floss that's really good for a match, so I'm just going to go ahead and use a couple of strands of that. I'm sure you could use just regular thread if you had it, but this is just convenient for me, so that's what I'm going to use. Make my knot. If you watched my video where I made pom-poms for the hats for the marshmallow mugs, then you know how I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this the inside of the witch hat, so I'm going to want my knot on this side, and basically I'm just gathering up this circle. So I'm just making these stitches. Let's see, can you see that? Like that. I'll do maybe 2 or 3 at a time. I'm going all the way around the circle, not, pretty big stitches. Just enough to get it all gathered. Staying, 1/8 of an inch or maybe a little bit more from the side. So what I'm going to work on next is making the broom for my witch, and I just use some raffia to do that. But if you didn't have raffia, you could probably just, use some straw or maybe even some embroidery floss. And I'm just going to wrap this around my finger. And then I'm just going to take another small piece and tie a knot. And this is a little tricky, so you might want an extra pair of hands. Alright, and then I literally just take a stick from my yard, and that's, maybe a little more than 2 inches, and I just kind of work it in there. You could, obviously, if you wanted to, put it in before you tie that knot around. I've never had any trouble getting it in there. And that just allows me to tie a nice tight knot by doing it afterwards. Whoops. A bit too hard. There we go. But, you know, whatever order works for you. And then what I do is I just use my scissors to open up all the bristles of my broom. It's pretty good. And then I just like to put a little dot of glue on that knot just to kind of give it a little extra support. And then I'll face that side towards the witch when I put it in her hands so that you can't see that dot of glue. But I just want to make sure that that knot's not going to give way. Alright, so now I'm going to work on the witch's ponytails. And what I do is I just glue these edges under here first. So I'll run some glue on this side, hold it down, let it dry, glue on this side, fold it down, let it dry, and I'll do the same to the other side. Alright. And so I like my witch to have some ponytails just to try to keep her hair under control. Completely optional, of course. So what I use is just some embroidery floss in purple, kind of to tie in the color from her sleeves of her arms. And, you know, just keep track of which side is the back, because I often lose track. But here's my back side, so this is the side that's going to have the knot on it. Kind of decide how far down you want the ponytail to go. Again, it might be handy to have another pair of hands to hold. If you don't want to use embroidery floss or don't have any, of course, some small ribbon would be good. And on some of the girl gnomes that I've made, I'll do more than one ponytail, you know, just for some extra flair, so you could put a second one in or a third, however many you like. You could mix and match the colors, whatever makes you happy. And again, I'm just going to put another dot of glue right there on that knot to make sure it doesn't come loose. Now it's time to work on the witch's hat. So, just like I did for the cone body, I'm going to go ahead and just trim close to the stitching, but not the way, not, you know, through the stitching. Up at that point there, just to get rid of some of the bulk. And turn it inside out. And I just carefully use a pin to try to pull more of that point out, because it can be tricky. Sometimes the end of a paintbrush is nice to get into that point. And I can work on that more later. Okay, so for the hat, I had mentioned that the circle right here is actually, you know, where this cone gets sewn to it. but that I make a smaller circle, which I'll have the pattern for you on the blog. But now I'm just going to make little cuts, basically going towards that circle. And if you're not a sewer, you could definitely just glue this hat together. Or even if you are a sewer and just don't feel like it, like I sometimes don't, you can glue the hat together. So I slide it down, but then I have to get all these notches pushed through, like so. And I know it's hard to see because it's black on black. Okay, looks pretty good. And I've just got my thread doubled up, and I'm basically just going around and I'm about, I'm going about the height of where those notches are as I'm sewing. And I'm not putting the stitches super close together, obviously. It's just enough to keep the two pieces together. I'm going to be sewing this hat, or just, adding a few stitches here and there to get this hat to stay attached to the gnome body. So between those stitches and these stitches, just keeping the two parts together. And like I've said for other gnomes, you can put your seam wherever you want. I find that I can often just hide it with either a beard, or in this case with a ponytail. So I think that's what I'm going to do. So since that's going to be kind of off to the side with the ponytail, I'll put the seam for my hat towards the back. And then I just make sure to tuck all that in there. And you could even glue that too if you didn't want it to move. And I will add, before I do that, add just a little bit of fiberfill. It's almost not needed because it fits, pretty nice, but I just add a little extra. So basically getting to the point where I just have a lot of pieces that need to be put together. And now I just need to decide which ones I want to do first. I think I want to wait on putting the hair on, just because as I put the arms on, I'll be stitching with the thread, and I just don't want to mess up her beautiful hairdo. So I think I'm going to try to do the arms here first. And I'm going to use green embroidery floss to tie the buttons on. Or I should say to stitch the buttons on. And I'm just folding that under a little bit since I didn't sew that edge under. And I've also mentioned how sometimes I add wire to her arms, or really to any of my gnome's arms. I don't feel like it's really necessary for this one, but you could do that if you really wanted to get specific with where you wanted her arms to be. So I have this seam here for where her ponytail is going to go, so I know her arm needs to come just a little bit to the side. So I'll go ahead and get my thread started, and I'm trying to keep the seam from the arm facing in towards the body so we don't see it. Or you could face it, you know, down as well. Either way. And I think I just got these orange buttons from Joann's in a package. You could probably even find some Halloween buttons if you wanted to get really festive. What's my needle? Alright, so arm, ponytail, nose, ponytail, arm. Need to make the ribbon that I have go around here with a buckle. And so what I use for that is just more of the arm fabric to kind of coordinate. She's a well put together witch. So I just cut, you know, again, 1/4 of an inch about. It's apparently my favorite measurement in the whole world. And I'm just measuring to see about how far around I need that to go. I think I need a little bit more than what I have there. I'll start on this side. And I just eyeball this as well. You know, this is cotton, so it frays a little bit. I kind of like that. That's why I just go with it. Because I like her, like I said, to be kind of rough and not perfect. She's a witch, you know, and she's got other things to do. But if you wanted, you know, a very perfect edge, you could use ribbon instead. And also because the cone, you know, her head is cone shaped, so it's got a little bit of a slant as it's going around. And you know, my fabric does not do that, so it's going to be on there a little bit loose. So the whole thing isn't really going to, you know, look super perfect, just because it, you know, it can't fit right to the hat. If you did want it to fit right to the hat, you would need to cut your strip to go like that, like the bottom of the hat did. and then it would fit right snug up against the hat. But mine's going to be loose, and like I said, I just kind of like it that way. I like that she's not perfect, that she has, you know, her ribbon's frayed a little bit, and that's all right with her. So I just have it go around, sit down at the bottom of the cone, pull it around, and then I just glue it together in the back. And I like to give her a little bit of buckle in front, just for a little bit of flair. And I just use this gold ribbon that I've had forever. You know, I think you can even find small buckles maybe, whether it's in, you know, with the buttons or scrapbooking stuff. But I basically just cut 4 pieces pretty close to the same length, and then I can kind of fix them to the size they need to be as I go. But I'm really just going to take these pieces here and just glue them together with my glue gun in a square, and then if they're not all the same length, I can just trim it off after I've glued them together, so they don't have to be perfect at this point. And I'm just putting a dot of glue in the corners. And I just glue that to the front right there. And allow her ribbon to kind of show through. Okay, now that I'm kind of done messing around with her face area, I can go ahead and I'll add the ponytails now, because now I don't feel like I'm going to mess up her hair while I'm working with her. So I'm just going to attach them here and here. I can tell her hair's a little bit messy here. I have a little bit of glue. I don't want to cut off too much of what she has there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run just a stripe of glue here and a stripe of glue there. Like I said, I want to cover my seam with one of the ponytails, and then the other one will just go on the opposite side. Alright, we're getting close to the end. Let's see here. Where did I put her broom? Here's her broom. I'll just trim up. That piece is kind of doing too much craziness. There we go. Okay. And you could stitch this on as well, but I'm going to go with the glue. And I just put a little bit there. And then I have her hand hold it on this side here, right there, and I just put a dot of glue. Alright, and then just the last little fine detail I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a dot of glue here, in between the nose and the hat, and at the top of this ponytail, just to keep those pieces together, because obviously she doesn't look as nice if it looks like, you know, her hair isn't up underneath that hat. So I'm just going to add that real quick. then at the end is where I just try to spend most of my time getting rid of all the glue gun strings and all the fuzz and little pieces of felt that have gotten stuck. But that is it. She is finished. Lots of little details, but I think they make her just extra cute. Well, thanks for watching my video, and have a great day. If you like what you saw here, please make sure to like, subscribe, leave me a comment. See you guys later. Bye.